This is Regina White Favors with Homeless Recovery Tips. And so the topic is use extended stay as a recovery tool. So let's look at this from a very important point of view. Say, for instance, you lost your job during the financial recession, then you had to get unemployment, and then you had to move in with family members, and things didn't always go so well with family members. Sometimes you were kicked out because people can't understand that why you don't have a job and they have a job. And a lot of times folks don't understand that they've already been on their job for X amount of years, and so they didn't lose their job while the recession was going on. You lost your jobs, and so that's why you are not on the job. And then you end up having to move into a homeless shelter, which has time limits. Some homeless shelters allow for 30-minute stay. There's emergency stay first, and then there's 30-day stay. And then there are 3-month stays. And then if you can get on program, some kind of program, that could be 6 months, 9 months, 18 months, right? Right, depending upon the program. And then eventually your time runs out in either one of those categories and you are forced to leave. But you were able to find a job. And so that job gives you some kind of stability money. However, you don't have recent rental record, right? Or you may have an eviction on your record. So then the obvious case would be some people would think, well, I can't get my own apartment. Let me move in with a friend and roommate. To me, that's not a good decision because unless the roommate puts you on the lease, you have no rights. You can't claim any rights there. And even if they try to kick you out and you decide not to leave, you're not on the lease, and the apartment owners, landlords, can enforce the lease. Either they enforce the lease and you have to leave, or they enforce the lease and the person has to leave themselves. And then that's going to affect your friendship. So it's not always a good idea to move in with someone. Family members have their tolerance, they have their patience, which is very short lived. So the only real true objective would be to move into an extended stay, not a regular motel, but an extended stay that usually, if you stay there long enough, they have a monthly rate. And so the monthly rate, depending upon the extended stay that you choose, could range from 1,000 at, say, Studio Six, which is the Motel Six line of extended stay motels. If you stay at Extended Stay America, you are looking at between 1,500 and 1,900 a month. And any other extended stays I'm not familiar with. But I am familiar with Studio Six of the Motel Six line because I stayed at Studio Six myself, and so I understand that. When I got out of the shelter in 2012, I moved into a Studio Six, which was ironically right down the street from the shelter. Moved in there, and I stayed there, and it comes already furnished, right? It looks like a studio apartment, if you can think of it like that. It has burner stoves, it has a full size refrigerator, it is cleaned twice a week, it has all of the furnishings, all the cable is free. You don't have to pay for internet, right? There are some Studio Six locations or franchisees that require you to pay maybe like $5 extra for per stay. But the one that I stayed in, I didn't have to pay any of all of that. And so I just had one bill at the end of the month. That helps you plan when you are in recovery from a life setback. That it makes it and really strategic financially that you just have the one bill. And the one bill includes the rent, the utilities, water, the housekeeping, the internet, everything under that one umbrella. And so my rent started at 750 somewhere in 2013 or so, and then it moved maybe 5 years later to 825, and then it capped, and then I think it went to 900, and then when I left it capped at 1,000, and for new people coming in it was going to be 1,200. But that room was huge. It was huge, and I did all of my planning there. I wrote all of my books from that standpoint. I was able to go to work and keep teaching jobs, and my college was 13 minutes away on the bus. I had access to trains, rail systems. Then I had a local 7-Eleven, Family Dollar. It gave me a sense of stability. So I didn't have to roam about, wilderness wanderers, roam about trying to find the best place. And then it puts you in an adult mindset. It is not a shameful thing that you have to move into an extended stay. Just think of it like this: you don't have to deal with someone else, and all their intolerance while you are living with that person. So it's better that you have the peace. Sometimes you got to pay for peace. So I remember when I was at the Salvation Army, and a lot of people um, were getting a retirement check or some sort of disability check, and they said to themselves, "Well, I can't move in because I don't make that much money." And to me, there's always a way. There's a no, you don't want to take the majority of your um, disability check and pay it towards rent, but at least it keeps you off the streets. And that's why I say in a previous audio that homelessness is a choice, because say for instance you're getting a disability check of $1,200, right? Okay, and your rent could be 650, if you found the right apartment, and then you just manage other expenses, and then you have the rest of the money. People can't seem to do the math aspect of it. They look at the fact that I'm going to have to pay all this money, and I'd rather just keep all this money to myself. So that means you would rather stay on the streets. You would rather continue lying down on the ground in the mud, in the rain, in the snow, in the sleet, and the freezing weather. You would rather do that than to go into a place. But some shelters also have warming centers that allow people to come in, and so people have sort of um, made homelessness strategic for them. When it's hot, they can go into the cooling centers, use the restroom, get some water. When it's cold, they can go into the warming centers, use the restroom, get some water and some food too sometimes. And so they've made it so strategic that they would rather keep their money. But when you do that, though, you still live without some kind of purpose because you're still wandering about. And at least when you get into the extended stay motel, you can clean up, you can you can begin the healing process in your mind about homelessness as a belief system. You can lay on the bed and watch some TV, take a shower, cook some food, buy some groceries. You can manage yourself as an adult. The longer you stay homeless and in a state of homelessness, you're still acting like a child. You're still acting like a child who needs to be parented, who needs a parent, who needs a caregiver, and you're still acting like a person who needs to be sponsored versus you sponsoring yourself and taking care of yourself. It's very important. So use extended stay as a recovery tool. You're not going to fully recover until you get out of homelessness, until you get out of the extended stay into an apartment and begin to truly recover. But you can recover some aspects of your homelessness by using the extended stay as a tool. And you set a time limit. You set a goal. I stayed in the extended stay there was a gap between 2012 and 2013 because I wasn't fully back on a job. I was still doing freelance contracting, and so I just didn't have enough money to keep up my stay there. And then once I was able to get back on with my college in 2013, I set a goal to become financially stable, to stay in one place, pay bills, things like that, and stay financially stable. And so, 2013, I stayed in the extended stay from 2013 to November 2022. And that allowed me to plan, that allowed me to write the books, that allowed me to teach, that allowed me to save some little bit of money. It was hard because I still, even as a teacher, as a part-time teacher, I still didn't make a lot of money. It's like I made just enough in order for me to pay my expenses as an adult and have a little bit money to buy a few things, buy clothes, buy things like that. It was one of those just enough and a little bit over just enough, but it wasn't going to be anything completely life changing. That time that I spent at the extended stay was planning time, was planning my exit. Now it took 8+ years, but it was planning time. And so that's why you can use the extended stay as a recovery tool, because it's always planning. But it gives you some record of staying somewhere so that when you decide to move into an apartment, you can say, well, I stayed at the extended stay, paid this amount of rent, here are my receipts. You may not be able to use them as a recommendation because it's a privacy issue, but if you keep your receipts, you can show them what you paid and how long you stayed there. And then that gives you some kind of record, because they know that at the extended stay, you have to pay or they will kick you out. There is no lease at the extended stay. And so they know that you were responsible enough to stay there for 2, 3, 4, 5 plus years. So that means if you were able to pay that at that rate, whatever that rate is, then you can pay the rate at the apartment complex. And so think about this as you are planning your recovery from homelessness, because you need somewhere, and sometimes it is not always productive to move in with family members. It's not always productive to move in with friends, because friends think you should be um, all better the very day you get out of a homeless shelter, right? There's still some emotional and psychological and financial and spiritual setbacks that you will kind of have to struggle with and overcome. You still have that process. You have the process pre homeless, you have the process during homeless, you have the process post homeless, and then you have your recovery time from being homeless. And that leads to healing and solitude and trying to get yourself back together as an adult. So, this is Homeless Recovery Tips. Use extended stay as a recovery tool.